Hello, art hubbers. Welcome. Today, I'm going to show you how to make an action painting in the style of American artist Jackson Pollock. We'll be first looking at the work of Jackson Pollock as you learn about abstract expressionism and action painting itself. Now, as you're looking, I really want you to observe the lines and shapes that make up an action painting. And finally, you will create an action painting using paper, paint, and your imagination. Let's find out more. Jackson Pollock was an American abstract expressionist painter born over 100 years ago on a farm in the Wild West in Wyoming. He was widely known for his drip technique, meaning he didn't like standing in front of an easel with a brush and paint. Instead, when he painted, he moved. His canvases were very large and they were often spread out flat on the floor of his New York studio. This allowed him to view and move and paint the canvases from all angles. He would actually walk around the huge canvas. Sometimes he'd drip paint. Sometimes he'd splash using brushes, sticks, and spoons. And sometimes he'd pour straight from the can. Other times, he whirled his arms around and would literally throw liquid household paint onto his canvases in order to create his paintings. It was also called an all-over painting or action painting since he covered the entire canvas and used the force of his whole body to paint. Many people say he would literally dance as though he was under a spell as he created his masterpieces like this one here, Summertime. Some of his paintings actually still have footprints on them from when he'd step in the paint. Although the photos we looked at earlier of him in action, they don't really show it, but he would move very quickly across the painting, dribbling the paint in long, wobbly lines. But Jackson was also very careful with his drips and splashes, making sure the paint landed exactly where he wanted. He concentrated on every movement, every colour choice, until the very last drop of paint fell onto the canvas. Focus, peace, and inspiration was so important to Jackson. That was why he moved from the big city, New York, to a farm in the countryside with his wife Lee. There he could continue to experiment with a new way of painting. Pollock is widely considered the most challenging and influential American artist of the 20th century. Challenging because his form of abstract expressionism was so extreme. Now, the abstract expressionists were a group of young New York artists in the mid 1940s, around the same time as Pollock, who made paintings that were non representational, meaning they didn't look like anything. Instead, they tried to show emotions like happiness or anger in the expressive marks that they made in their drawings, paintings, and sculptures. Can you think of another artist we've learned about recently who shared this approach to their art making? Now, some people didn't like the art Jackson Pollock made. They didn't understand it. They said it was too random and not real art. But Jackson could not paint in any other way. When he painted, his heart would beat like a drum and he could not stay still. People soon grew to understand his artwork, and many praised Jackson. And now his paintings hang in museums all around the world. And although he died in 1956, his work continues to inspire people from all over the world to experiment and invent new ways of painting. Now, I have enlisted the help of one of my brilliant Year 6s, Lana, who, despite having a fractured hand, is going to show you how she has a go making an action painting in the style of Pollock. This is something that is ideally best done outdoors because it can be really quite messy. And you've got the whole of half term to experiment with this. So take your time, make sure you get an adult's permission, get your adults involved in this activity. This could be really, really fun. And as Lana says, it's very deeply satisfying. You'll need a few materials. Give yourself plenty of time to gather them together. And as I say, don't worry, there's no rush with this lesson. You'll need heavy paper, but I'll actually use some polystyrene sheets here, kindly donated by a mum at school. And this works super well. It's light and easily transportable. You'll also need paint, brushes, you may need water, definitely a painting smock or a rubbish bag with arm and head holes works just as well. And a bucket of water to make your clean-up easier, and possibly some old towels. Put on your paint smock or your garbage bag to begin, and take off your shoes and socks because this can get messy. Roll out a section of your paper on the ground outside, and that's to catch any spills and drips, which is the whole idea of this activity. Next, you have to think about the colours you'll use. Put your various colours of paint in small containers. Yogurt or margarine containers are really good. And put those containers on a newspaper or some other high surface if possible, which prevents any accidents involved if you step in the paint. Now, we haven't done that here, but I'm trusting Lana to be very careful. Before beginning, it's a good idea to actually try some relaxation and deep breathing exercises to help prepare you to focus on your creative task at hand. This is about dripping and splooshing the paint carefully. Now, using paint brushes, you could stand directly above your paper, get up onto your feet and drip paint onto the paper below. Use as many colours as you choose. Choose your colours carefully, as I say. And your paint should be applied to the paper as drippy lines and splats. Because it is an action painting, you have to keep moving around as you paint. It's no good sticking in one place for too long. Experiment flicking with the brush and even borrowing everyday kitchen items to use as your painted materials. I think spatulas can be really fun for spreading, even plungers. And keep looking, keep observing how the painting is progressing. Once your whole paper is covered in paint, it's time to wash up. And this is where your big buckets of water come in handy. Good luck, action painters. I can't wait to see how these creations evolve.